I didn't show you this before. She brought it up. I'll just mention it here. So if you want to do this from like your Mac or from a PC after you get telnet working, which is irritating on a PC, then you can telnet to any server like AOL on port 80, and then you can send it a request like get/http/1.1, enter host AOL.com, enter. And then you get a reply, and this is a 301 reply, so it understood my request and said move permanently because it wants me to be at www.aol.com. But anyway, you can do this. This is what it looks like. If that is what your browser is actually doing behind the scenes, and then rendering the graphics. Anyway, so let's carry on here. All right, and let me see if I can get that iClicker thing out of the way. Put it someplace less. Good, it moves. That's a good start. All right, now here and here. All right, so cookies and web bugs are common ways to mark your machine. Cookies are magic cookies. They're invented to compensate for the fact that HTTP is a stateless protocol. So when you send a request, you get a reply, and it's over. If you send another request later, it doesn't remember you at all. So there's no way to keep track of who you are, and for example, that you logged in, and you should be looking at your email now, except to mark your machine somehow, and the system, that's what I invented, the magic cookie. The cookie means they can add something to the reply that sets a cookie on your machine, which stores a little text file on your machine that will last for some period of time. And that's the idea. That's the polite, expected way to mark your machine, so when you come back to the same server, it can tell who you are by what cookie it put on you last time. So that could, in principle, that's quite useful. In practice, it can be abused. You can see them in Firefox. You'll just see a list of text files, one for every website. And there's the thing called the same origin policy, which means if ccsf.edu puts a cookie on your machine, google.com cannot read that cookie. Only the same domain can read the same cookie. The problem is there are many tricks to trick your browser into being confused about where it is. For example, I can just change your DNS settings to go to a fake DNS server that I control, and then tell your browser that you're at Google when you're not. And your browser will cheerfully hand over Google's cookies to that server because it believes it's at Google. And there's a lot of other tricks that trick it. But anyway, that's for what it's worth, that's what security you have. And this is unfortunate because your cookie is usually more useful than your password. If you log into something these days, especially these days of mobile devices, like you log into like Yahoo or Facebook or something, when you type in your password on your phone, you only have to do it once, and then it never asks you again for a long time. That's because it stored a cookie there that's good for maybe years. And so if I can steal that cookie, I can get in your account. And even if you change your password, for most systems, I can still get in with the old cookie. There's nothing you can do but delete your account to get rid of it. Yeah?
Oh. Wait, so if you delete cookies off your machine, they don't have it anymore? Or?
If you delete a cookie out of your browser, then the next person that uses that browser would have to log in again. So it protects you in like a shared lab where you're going to leave and another student's going to use that machine. But it doesn't stop a person who stole your cookie from using it. Now when you log out, the cookie ought to be invalidated at the server. But about half the services I tested out of hundreds, it doesn't do it. You can just use the old stolen cookie and get back in. And even after you do a password change, the old stolen cookie continues to work. And this is largely by design because people have phones and tablets and they don't want to try to grab their old phone and get on Facebook and not be able to get on and have to try to type in their password. So they have an incentive to make the old cookies last forever. Yeah? You got a question?
Yes, can you just define what a cookie is?
It's a little bit of text that comes in. We have them, you should be able to see them here in Burp. Let me bring them up. I should never close this when I'm teaching this class. All right. All right. And let's see if I still have Firefox up. Okay, so let's go to AOL again, because AOL drops a ton of cookies. All right. And Burp should be showing something here, Burp. Okay. Oh, it's intercepting, of course. I have to turn that off. And now I go here. All right. So here's AOL. It is sent right here. Because I've been to AOL already, even when I'm sending my first request to AOL, I'm sending a cookie. And it's all this mess here. Here it is formatted. Your cookie is just a series of name-value pairs. So I have something called TST that stands all that, and something called GRV Insights that's all that. Proper cookies should be like this. They should all just be random numbers. If you're a sleazy evil programmer, you'll put stuff in here like passwords, email addresses, credit card numbers, and that's rude because this is stored unencrypted on your disk and often transmitted unencrypted over the wire. So a professional site like AOL will just have random things you don't know anything about here. But the point is, this authenticates me to something called CUN. Some service on the AOL server knows what this means and has a database with this number in it. So when I come back later, it'll read this cookie and say, I know who that guy is, so send him this ad. That's the point of it. And these are just text files that are stored in your machine, and your browser reads them, and every time you go back to the website, it serves up the cookie, and every time the server replies, it can set more cookies. It didn't set any cookies here, but some of these others probably will. Here's one. Nah. You may not see one being set right away, but there'll be some of these guys will set those cookies. You'll see it up here in the header. So they're just little information added to your machine. And they're just text, so they don't have any active code, but they can result in invading your privacy, and that's what Google does. The company called DoubleClick invented this concept of third-party cookies, and Google bought them because it was a way to target ads, and that's what Google's business is. So the way it works is, if I want to know what everybody on Earth is doing all the time, then what I do is I add an extra image to every website. And Google has done this by offering real value. If you have a website that serves any purpose on the internet and you're not using Google Analytics, you need to go right now home and get it and put it on your website, because Google Analytics is free money. If you put some script, Google will just say, copy this script and put it on your web page. Now you're in Google Analytics. And what it'll do is every single person that comes to your page, you can configure it so I cut your page into like 10 sections. And it will show each person a different version of your page with the sections realigned. You define the sections, and then you define the goal. I want people to click this button, like the buy button. I want more people to click the buy button. And Google will shuffle the pages and show different versions to different people and keep track of the statistics and optimize your page to make sure the most people do your goal. You can get like 10 or 20% more success for free by putting Google Analytics code on your page. Yeah?
So they're basically optimizing A/B testing for you?
Yes, they're optimizing your page, exactly. A/B testing and optimizing automatically and free, all just for the cost of putting some Google script on your page that puts a cookie on every machine that views it. And also, everyone that puts any kind of ads on their page, they always join an advertising platform, and they also put a cookie on your page. So they'll put an image on your page that is a 1x1 pixel transparent GIF. So it has no effect on the appearance of the page, but it means that your browser sends a request to their server, and in the reply they get a chance to set a cookie. And after you get the same company to put a cookie, a little image on every website on the web, which is approximately what has happened, almost every one of them has Google or DoubleClick cookies, then every time you go to any website, you tell DoubleClick where you are. You go somewhere else, you tell DoubleClick where you are. So they have a record of what everybody's doing and who everybody is. This is why people get upset. But the point is, that's how they make all their money. They can target ads. It used to be, if I wanted to sell cars, I have to like buy a spot on the Super Bowl and show 100 million people an ad, and only 1% of them want to buy a car. Now I can show just 1,000 ads to people, 500 of which want to buy a car this week, because they can watch your browsing and see you look like you're shopping for a car. So in principle, it's great, because instead of every person seeing 1,000 ads you don't care about, you see 10 ads that you do care about. But it's very obvious. Every time I go to any website, they're advertising books about hacking and stuff I just bought at Amazon and things like that. The tracking is very effective. But at some point, it invades your privacy. And there was a big expose, I think, about 2 years ago from Kmart, I think. One of the people at Kmart was interviewed and told this stuff before his boss was able to make him shut up. And he said, Kmart figured out how to do this with physical people in the store. They would keep track of what you bought. And that's why you have loyalty cards. You know, you get a large discount at Safeway with that loyalty card. I was always fascinated by that, because I used to be a database analyst. And I said, wow, you could do so much with that data. And what they do with that data, my thought, is you could keep any of the food from going bad. You could totally figure out exactly how many oranges are going to sell and get them in the right place, but you can do much more. And what Kmart did, I think it was Kmart, either Kmart or Target, was they shuffled things around in the store to see how they would sell. 7-Eleven found out that if you put the beer next to the diapers, it sells a lot better. And no, they couldn't have predicted that, but they found it by tracking it. And the reason this happens is because couples that have a new baby, the husband is often running out because they ran out of diapers late at night. And he says, well, I'm here, I'll just get you. Anyway, but they found, that's one. The other one they found out, though, was they did studies on how to sell things to people, and few people just are stuck in a rut. They just buy the same brand of toothpaste, the same brand of soap, the same brand of everything from the same store for year after year. There's only certain times in their life when they're their life is thrown into turmoil, and you can catch them and get them to change to be loyal to a different brand. And one of the main choices there is when you have your first baby, when you get married. This changes your whole life, your schedule changes, your diet changes, and at this point, people can be convinced to go to a different store. So they really want to advertise you and hit you at that moment. So they want to find that moment. So they found out how to do this from what things people buy in the store. And they found out they could predict when women are pregnant by what they buy in the store. There are obvious things like pregnancy tests, but there are less obvious things too. And they used the computer algorithms, those loyalty cards, and they got to where they could predict it very accurately. And so they started sending all the women that were about 7 months pregnant all these ads that would advertise baby carriages and baby food and maternity dresses and all this stuff at great discounts to get them. And so he finally had some guy come in with this thing, "My daughter's not pregnant, she's a good girl, why did you send this to her?" And then it turned out that she was pregnant. And they said, "How did you know?" And they really didn't want to answer any of these questions, so they deliberately altered the ad to be, half of it would be like lawnmowers and pool tables and stuff, to make it less obvious what the point of it was. But anyway, the point is this technique is incredibly effective, and it pays for the whole internet. And if you outlawed this and had privacy concerns, so people aren't allowed to track everything you do, then you'd have to pay for your website some other way, a nickel for every email or something. This is what's paying for the whole internet. Yeah.
I'm back to the idea of cookies.
Yeah.
So this code, they just show which websites you have listed. They don't carry any information about your username or password, right?
Usually not. Because of the same origin policy, they only get information that they fetch from the other ones. They get the URL is all they would get. However, Google gets all your search terms, and they read all your mail, and they get everything you put on Google+. And they put a Google toolbar on your machine that watches everywhere you go, even in other browsers. And they don't want you deleting the cookies, so they mark your machine in many other ways. They record your IP address, they put flash cookies, they put dozens of marks on your machine. So even when you think you've cleaned them off, you're still there. If you want to get rid of them, there's a tool called GZapper you can download that will clean off all the Google cookies, and then they won't know who you are except from your IP address. So if you then move to a different coffee house, you're fine until the next time you touch a Google service, which for me would be about 5 seconds, and then you're gone, then you're hosed again. How long can you get through the day without YouTube or Gmail or Google search or any page with Google Analytics on it? Good luck. Yeah.
Like on Facebook, there's sometimes they advertise on stuff and they're trying to make you click something.
Yeah.
And then it generates and it tells you, is it okay if I grab you will share that information?
Yeah.
So is it basically asking for a cookie too?
Sometimes it is. Most pages now warn you about cookies. There's been a law passed where they have to say, we use cookies, and you have to click OK. Facebook is notorious for this. What Facebook has done over and over and over, they promise you everything you say will be confidential. Then about a year later, they just share it with the whole world to make more money. And they do this. They've even had court orders telling them not to do it, and last month they did it again. Because for them, the best thing for them is if you share it with more people and everybody is all interconnected. Google had a huge lawsuit when they did that with Google Buzz, was it? Yeah, they slammed everybody into the social network and automatically decided that anybody you'd sent several emails to was your friend. So people suddenly woke up in the morning and found that their boyfriend and their other boyfriend knew each other, and their angry ex-husband are all now their friends and can see everything they're doing. They said, what? And that was really a disaster. But it's been huge. They're all invading your privacy. The more they invade your privacy, the more money they make until they go too far and get in trouble. And then they back off 1 inch and start sneaking forward again. And Ghosttree is one place you can go. You can install this browser extension. It will show you all the people that are putting cookies on your machine in a sort of fun way. And you'll see that every site that is remotely commercial is putting like 30 cookies on your machine, like you could see at AOL. You're not talking to just one company. You're talking to a whole crowd of people spying over everything you do. In case you're not paranoid enough, put this on your machine for a day or two, and you'll be more worried than ever. Yeah?
So the cookie doesn't store the information like email address or password? But
Not in principle it could, but in practice, very few people are dumb enough to do that. The big companies have learned not to do that. It's just a random number.
But they store the session number, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the
That's it. It stores a session number or some kind of identifier, which is just a random number, which only they know what it means.
So you said that normally in the bigger companies like the Iowa and so on, they do not set any expiring date on the session.
Oh, it has an
once you log out, for example.
No, not you can make them so you can set an expiration date of 0, and then when they log out or to close the browser, it will be gone. But most of the time, they make them last for years. You can set the date to anything you want. All right. So then there's DNS. DNS is the service that turns your alphabetical domain names into numerical addresses. So if I want to find, I can do dig. I can dig google.com, and it will tell me the IP address for google.com. This is called the A record, and that's it. I can't see Google without doing that because the IP protocol will only deliver things that are addressed by number. So you use the DNS to look up the number, and then your browser sends the traffic to this number, telling where it went. So you can dig. The normal dig will just give me one IP version 4 address. You can also dig any to google.com, and this will tell me more information about Google in principle. And Google might have signed their domain, which is slowing down my results here from City College. I may have to use an online looking glass. Let's try somebody simpler like Yahoo. I think Yahoo is still old-fashioned enough that this will actually respond on our network, but maybe not. I think I'll go to my slides. Looks like I'm going to have problems there. But the point is you can do DNS queries, and the reason we're having trouble here is because now that they're signed, they're larger, and the City College infrastructure is not necessarily ready to deliver them correctly. But anyway, you have a DNS server. You usually have several DNS servers for each domain, because if one goes down, you want the other one to be up so people can find your hosts. But one of them is the master, and that's called the start of authority, and all the others have copies of the master record. So I should be able to at least get that out of here. Yeah, no servers. That's kind of goofy. Let's try. All right, let's try this. Dig at 8.8.8. Start of authority for yahoo.com. There. See if that works. There. Okay. So it goes to Google's DNS server 8.8.8.8, which is their free DNS server, which, by the way, would be worth a ton to target ads, and they promise they're not doing that. And I just wonder. I mean, there's this pile of money just sitting there. We're not taking that money. We're not taking that money. Really, we're not taking it. I don't wonder how long this is going to last. But anyway, supposedly they aren't looking at this. But anyway, so I use it all the time. It's always up. That's why it's great. So this is going to find the start of authority. So this is the authority city of Yahoo server, which is this one, start of authority, ns1.yahoo.com. And there are other ones. If I just do ns to see all the name servers of Yahoo, then they have a bunch of them. But ns1 is the master record, and these are all copies of the master record. That's the different ones there. All right. Now, so you can ask for things like name servers and mail servers and such. And you can perhaps even do a zone transfer. A zone transfer is intended to copy the entire database from the master to one of those copies. That's how it does it. So if I put up a new name server, I do a zone transfer from the start of authority to get a copy of the database. And in the old days, maybe 10 years ago, Microsoft software and other things would automatically have this turned on for everybody. So everybody could just do a zone transfer to get the entire database. Now, normally, that shouldn't matter because the only thing in a public DNS server's DNS database should be your public servers. But the problem is, as it usually is, Microsoft. Microsoft and Apple, by the way, both did horrible things with DNS, but Microsoft made it so every time you boot up a machine and it goes to DHCP and gets an address, it records that in the local DNS server with a DNS entry, which is used by parts of the Microsoft networking system, and a lot of people don't know that, and they use the same DNS server for external records, so in fact, every machine in their entire network is in the DNS server. And many of them they consider confidential and they don't want everybody to know about. And that's why zone transfers are considered a security flaw. If you allow these, people can usually find essentially the map of your whole network, and that is more information than they really should be able to have. Most modern DNS servers have this turned off by default, but since DNS servers can stay up for a long time, some of them are still old. Here's where you do it in Microsoft. You just go right here. You can allow zone transfers to any server, and that was the default for a while. It would be better to have it only for certain IP addresses or something, so just random people on the internet can't just download the whole database, called the zone file. Anyway, and then there's social engineering. The most powerful attack, this is the largest vulnerability at every company and the hardest to patch, is to just trick the people into doing stupid things. And it's not technical, it's been around forever. It's extremely effective. This is now part of all penetration tests. It is very useful. Like I said, the most common way a penetration test gets in is they send emails to people and write something so interesting that somebody clicks on a link. Even though they've been told don't click on a link, you just have to tell a good enough story that makes them interested enough that they don't care about that and they want to click that link. So Kevin Mitnick invented this term, social engineering. He was the expert at this. He was the FBI's most wanted hacker in the world for a couple of years in the 90s. He ran rings around the FBI. He hacked the phone network. He would leave town right before they came to catch him. And his main thing was tricking people with social engineering, but he was pretty good on telephone phreaking and not bad on computer attacks either. So I have a video worth hearing here, and I will see if I can get the technology to work here. Link 4M. Theoretically, I can project sound through this thing. Looks like it's all the way up. We're going to see what happens. That's not a good sign. Aha! A layer 1 problem. All right. That might work. I'm not so sure. That felt kind of loose.